everybody. Welcome back to Accepting Reality. I'm alongside Jake as usual. We are going to focus on really just one topic tonight, but it's definitely going to take up a good chunk of time. First, Jake, how you doing?
Always good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. So I think we both saw this headline. I didn't watch the full episode today, but there was a Dr. Phil episode where Matt Walsh, the contributor and writer for the Daily Wire, he was debating or just on a panel about transgenderism, and he was going up against somebody who was, I believe, non-binary or maybe transgender. I don't really know. To me, it just looked like a woman with a full-grown beard, and it threw me off. And I know it made a lot of the rounds in the news today, and it made us want to talk about transgenderism. So, Jake, take the lead on this one. What do you think?
I'm trying to pull up how it was him and like two other people, and then there was also a third person who was like some professor somewhere. But I'm trying to find. Give me a second. I'm trying to find exactly how they identified themselves because they were like a couple.
Oh,
All right, hold on a second. This is Addison and Ethan. All right, hold on a
Addison
second.
and Ethan.
Let me find. Addison is the one I believe with the long hair and the beard.
Okay, yeah,
Hold
I
on a
saw a
second.
few like still images of that, and that's
Oh, here
stuff
we go.
that'll make your skin crawl.
Okay, Ethan is the guy with the short hair. Addison hopes to educate others on being non-binary. Ethan was some sort of like it said trans trans masculine. I don't know. Hold on, I gotta find. But anyway, I'll find it as I'm looking. But yeah, the whole thing was it was later in the episode. I didn't get to watch the episode. I don't think anybody did. It was on during Biden's speech,
Ah,
which was I don't even know if you can call it a speech. It was,
what most of what he says cannot be. Yeah.
he was just babbling on. But um, so I think they're actually going to show it again, like this next morning at like 2 a.m. But some of the clips are on YouTube. So basically, the main part was Matt Walsh was saying he asked them that they don't like. He said, how do you know what a woman is? What is a woman? And they couldn't define it, but
Hmm.
they still would use it as so basically they were saying no one can be a woman because everybody has their own definition of woman. And he said, well, what is a woman? And they said, well, I don't know the answer to that. So it's basically the argument of they're trying to make an argument of something that they don't know the definition to. So it would be like me saying to you, I don't know what this means, but everybody should have their own definition of what it is, but I don't know what it is. So I don't know how to tell people that they should feel a certain way, which makes absolutely no sense. But
Hey.
it also he actually later in the episode they had I believe a couple that were with Matt Walsh on his side that were talking about how schools have started to have gender neutral bathrooms in
Yep.
schools and how their daughter would not be comfortable if there is a man in that the bathroom with her. I don't know how old the daughter was, but Matt Walsh cited a instance where I want to say transgender girl, but it was a boy who
Yep.
thinks he's a girl,
Yep.
was in a bathroom and they allowed it because they didn't want to hurt his feelings. I'm not sure how old he was. I'm assuming teenagers, but they ended up finding out that he was assaulting and abusing girls in the bathroom because he had access to the bathroom. So, I mean, they asked this doctor who's on this Dr. Phil show, who's got a mullet, and I don't know if she identifies as a woman. I don't know if she knows what a woman is, but they asked her about it, and she said that she doesn't really know for sure if it's a safety issue to have gender neutral bathrooms. And the whole point was, well, yes, because we've just had this example of this boy
Mhm.
who said he was a girl and used that as an opportunity. Now, maybe he does believe he's transgender. I don't know, but he used that as an opportunity to openly abuse girls in a high school bathroom.
And I think I know exactly what you're talking about. It's in Loudoun County in Virginia.
Yeah, that's it.
Because the Daily Wire's own investigative journalists were the ones who discovered it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what Matt Walsh had a lot of ammunition in that regard with that. It's a complete, I don't even want to know, temptation for a guy who maybe isn't raised the best, or he's just kind of twisted in his head because he's a teenage
Mhm.
boy in this crazy perverted society. Like now you're just giving them the free option because you can't tell these people no. If I went up
Right.
to one of these people and said I'm a girl, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, you're a girl." You know, that's insanity to me.
Well, he also made a point. Matt Walsh made a good point. He said, "You don't get to choose your pronouns, but you also it would be like me saying that you can choose your adjectives. And when you talk to somebody, you have to identify, or you have to call them and identify them as smart, handsome, intellectual, even though they may not be. I mean, it's he's like, the whole point is I can't choose what my pronouns are, they, them, z, they, zippity doo dah, whatever. The same way, I can't just identify as somebody who's handsome, somebody who's intelligent, somebody who's smart, trustworthy, whatever. Those are character traits that come along with your personality. So, and of course, they didn't want to say. And I think the one thing too that is kind of a pattern, and you probably notice this whenever you see debates, is liberals and conservatives will have certain debates, and it doesn't matter whether or not it's on transgender subjects or it could be on the Second Amendment or whatever. It spans across all topics. But most of the time, conservatives will politely sit there and listen and let liberals talk. But as soon as they go to talk, the liberals will try to cut them off and laugh and interrupt what they say. And this is exactly what happened on the Dr. Phil show with
Yeah.
Matt Walsh. And once he started talking, they just would jump in and criticize him and everything. And you could totally tell that, I mean, it's not even close. If it was a debate, if you even want to call it that, I mean, he mopped the floor with it.
Yeah, because Matt Walsh and anyone who agrees that transgenderism is unnatural is living in the real world. They are living in reality. People who are transgender, they are either willfully ignoring they have mental problems, or they're a victim of some sort of abuse or trauma that is throwing off their headspace, or
Mhm.
they really just want, humans, we crave validation and attention. And one of the easy ways to do that is to become in the minority or an oddball or something like that. That's why Matt Walsh will say this on his show that goth was a thing when he was in high school because it got
Mhm.
people attention. And he
Right.
said the adults in the room would tell you to go to your room. It's a phase and you'll grow out of it and you're going to regret it. But now the adults are telling kids who are like, I'm a girl now and I'm 8 years old. I'm an 8-year-old boy and I can say that I'm a girl. They're like, oh, yes, yes, you're a girl. We'll go buy you a dress. Now the parents are doing the opposite. And it's just creating this mental health hazard, disaster, whatever. I don't even know what to call it, but it's not good. So,
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a child. Oh, by the way, I found okay. Ethan identifies as non-binary transmasculine. So
what does that
what
mean?
whatever that means, we might have to find that out. But and he's married to Addison, who's a man but a woman, and all this other stuff. Anyway, yeah. I mean, when you take kids who are so vulnerable as it is, and you let them choose what gender they want to be, I mean, it's you would not let your 4-year-old decide anything more than what kind of juice they want. But now we're allowing them to choose their gender. I mean, it's crazy. And you're allowing kids, when you have a boy, let's just say, or a girl, who grow up a certain way and they are encouraged by their parents to be the opposite gender, because a lot of these parents tell that, say, well, my 4-year-old came to me and said that they want to be a girl. No 4-year-old cognitively knows that and goes up to their parent and says, you know what, Mom, I've really thought this over and I want to be a girl. And she's like, great. I'm glad that you decided that you've had a willful thought about it. That doesn't happen. So somewhere along the line, the parents are encouraging this behavior and foster it and they
Yeah,
grow it.
they're guilty. They're just
Yeah.
as guilty. And before I forget, I got the definition of transmasculine here. So this is good.
Yeah.
This is
Go for it.
Wikipedia. So I'm sorry, this is nonbinary.wiki.com. So this is a wonderful thing in my browsing history. Transmasculine, sometimes abbreviated to transmasc, is an umbrella term that describes a transgender person, generally one who was assigned female at birth. I'm not making this up. This is
Oh,
legitimately the words, and whose gender is masculine and or who express themselves in a masculine way. This is the next sentence really gets me. Transmasculine people feel a connection with masculinity, but do not always identify as male. So what are you? Like the
well, if
first
you
sentence
ask
just
them, they
defined
wouldn't
it.
know. They wouldn't know. They would say, I can't tell. Like he asks them, he goes, "You identify. What would you say? What is a woman?" And they say, "Well, I don't know. That's not for me to decide." Yet they will tell you that a child can say that they're a woman, a boy can say, but they don't know what that means. So it absolutely makes no sense. The level of, I don't know what the right word is, stupidity is off the charts.
Yeah, it's because think about that. So a 10-year-old girl can go to their parents and say, I'm a boy. And then the parents will take her to a doctor. They will put her on super high doses of testosterone to prevent her from going through natural orders of puberty and adolescence.
Mm-hmm.
And yet she's not old enough to drink. She's not legally able to consent. She's not old enough to drive. She's not old enough to be drafted or to serve in the military, but she has the ability to go undergo medical treatments that are still can have some pretty harsh side effects. And the parents cannot be stopped and the child can't be stopped. Like it just seems backwards to me.
Well,
You're
I
not
mean,
even able to consent to, and you got to be
right.
18 in America, legal adult, but you can decide if you want to be a boy or a girl or change your gender. And when you're like 7, it just seems silly to me.
Well, I mean, a child is created and wired a certain way. So if you all of a sudden try to alter that when they're so young, I mean, I don't know what the science is about when it's acceptable or it's not as harmful to inject hormones, opposite hormones in terms of gender in a person. I mean, I know they say that, you know, when a person reaches 25 years old, their brain is fully developed. So I don't know if it's after that or what. But if you take somebody who's definitely under 18 and whose body has not fully matured and you start injecting them in the opposite gender hormones, I mean, no wonder it's going to cause such a disparity and confusion because their body is going to be telling them one thing, but their mind is telling them something else, and their parents are telling them. I mean, kids are so confused as it is. You're just perpetuating that, and you're helping that out. You're growing it inside them, which is, child abuse, in my opinion.
Do you think that this is done on purpose to keep the society unstable so the government can gain more control? Or do you think it's just the natural progression of the perversion that's happened in America since the 60s?
I would probably say it's a little bit of both. I think the one thing that's important to note is that this is something that's only been really prevalent within the last, I would say, 5 years. I don't remember hearing more than 5 years ago about. I think that's when maybe things just started to come out about transgender. But the thing is that people will tell you that people who are transgender have felt like that their whole life, but now they felt comfortable coming out and saying
Uh-huh.
how they feel. But I mean, how does it all happen at the same time? How does everybody feel comfortable at the same time? I guess you could say that, uh, when somebody hears about a lot of examples and it inspires them to do it themselves, maybe. But I just think that it's odd that this has just kind of been a new thing over the last few years, especially. And it's the more that it's accepted, the more that it'll become the new normal, so to speak. But it's just, I mean, you have a school. I was looking this up because I wanted to bring this up, and I forgot the name of the school. But there's a school. I found this out. It's a private school in New York, and this was sometime, I'd say about half a year, 6 months, 7 months ago. And I can find the name of the school. It's in Manhattan, but they've banned the use of words such as mom and dad because they want people to be inclusive. They also don't want students to say parents. They would rather a student use the word grown-ups or family because you don't want to offend anybody who may view their mom and dad as maybe they have transgender parents. I don't know. But then they also don't want you to use words like vacation because that might offend a student who's maybe not as wealthy as other students, even though the school is $35,000. It's a private school to attend for middle schoolers. So, I mean, if a parent can pay $35,000 for
Middle
their
school.
sixth grader to go to school, but they can't afford to go on a vacation, something's wrong. But I just think that this whole transgender thing and these pronouns, this war on pronouns is so dangerous. And here we see this school in New York that is banning kids and will punish them for using words like mom, dad, parents, vacation, all this other stuff. I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
I truly think it's the next extension of the PC movement, so that we're so afraid to offend anybody, we don't speak up and we don't speak the truth and we don't live in the real world because everyone has their own truth where they can be 35 different genders based on the moon. Um, I think that's just another leg of it. I think because I mean you can't say vacation because you might offend a kid who didn't get to go on vacation. They are words. They have meanings. You have real experiences. Let's get back to reality when it comes to like the war on language. That's what I've called it because it's just silly to me.
What do you think it would do? Let's just say you had a child who's 10, 11 years old. What do you think it does to them when you limit such words like what we just said, that would normally to other kids be accepted, and then they go into the real world, go to college, get a job, and then they're in the real world, and they've been brought up to limit their language, and all of a sudden they go out into the real world, and everyone's using the language that they've supposedly thought of as evil. I mean, what do you think that does to them?
Well, it messes with your head and it makes you a victim. And that's right now America is how can I be the biggest victim? That's really what we have in our society. We don't have the society like we did, I'd say like 60 years ago or 70 years ago, where people who worked hard, even if it wasn't very, I don't want to say good looking work, um, they got praise for it because they're like, man, he's putting in the time, he's putting in the hours.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's, oh, I feel so bad. I'm $100,000 in debt from college because I got a degree in basket weaving from South
Mm-hmm.
Carolina State, and oh, please help me, and all this other stuff. It's just we flipped the script on it, and I think the transgender is just another product of it, where it's how to be a victim. Some of these people need help. I do not deny that, but I really think all of them coming out was partly just wanting attention.
See, now, what do you think started that whole movement of these people that feel entitled and they feel that people need to give them things? I mean, is it a byproduct of technology? It's made us lazier, but I mean, when did it seems like it's only started, I would say, in the generation since the 21st century.
I think it's a combination of technology giving us instant gratification, everyone in politics giving free money, left or right. It's just how
Uh-huh.
much money can I give to my base to keep a vote? That's how it goes. And then I think the collapse of the family. I think that if you're being raised by two dads or two moms or two parents who don't know what gender they are, I think that because I learned most of my responsibility from my family. I had things to do around the house. I had to help watch my younger brothers and sisters if my mom and dad needed to go somewhere. I learned responsibility and I learned I had to work for things. Now, most people don't have that. I read something, America, 40 to 50% of couples get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
So most people, so over half the country is growing up without a mother and a father their whole life. And I just think that's the biggest one. Combined with all the other stuff, we're a bunch of lazy people now.
Yeah, I know that kids that grow up in a household that has one parent do significantly worse, or I should say, have their chances of doing significantly worse in terms of graduating high school, college, earning more money throughout their life. I mean, versus a child who grows up in a two-parent household. But I just wonder, I don't know if I've ever seen any statistics on this, but a child who grows up in a household with same-sex parents, two dads, two moms, whatever, I think that I want to say that that's still they still do better versus single parent household. But again, I think that opens up a whole different amount
Can
of
of
issues,
worms. Yeah.
right? If it's somebody who's confused on the gender roles or on how the family should be structured, which is mom, dad, kids.
Yep. Yep. And I think another thing, and this is not a direct quote from Ben Shapiro, but when he was doing a lot of his lectures and stuff, he said two things you need to do, and you will not be broke in America is don't have kids until you're married and get a high school diploma. That's he
Mm-hmm.
said. He said statistically, you will be okay. He said it doesn't mean you're going to be rich, like millionaire, but it means you won't be living on the street, so to speak.
Yeah, and I don't know the reasons of it, but I know I remember seeing a study that said that, and I don't know if this correlates one way or the other, which way, but it said that people who live together before marriage are more likely to get divorced. Now,
Hmm.
that could be because it just might be a coincidence that people who are divorced just happen to live together before they were married.
Yeah.
But I've heard Jordan Peterson talk about it, and he says that when you live with somebody before they're married, you're essentially saying, okay, well, you're the one that I like for now, but I reserve the right to pick somebody else that's better than you
Yep.
because we're not married. There's no responsibility. There's no
There's no bond.
yeah, and there's no vow. There's no promise. I mean, nothing is you can say anything you want. And a lot of people would say that marriage is just, a wedding is just mindless words. But if I live together with somebody before we're married, I could tell them anything I want, but there's nothing concrete that says that I can't just get up and leave one day. And I
Yep.
think that when you get married, there's a whole bunch of problems that come along with that because you're kind of like, oh, wait a minute, we've been living together for years. Here we are. I've had this idea about what you're like when we are married, and then all of a sudden we get married, and now you're a different person.
Hmm.
This isn't who I thought, and
Yeah.
then therefore that turns into a lot of the people getting divorced.
Yeah. And that I want to know if there's any study, excuse me, um, if there's any study out there that kids who grow up in either a broken home, like the mother and father aren't together, or the
Mhm.
father leaves or the mother leaves, are they more or less likely to become LGBT or LGBTQ plus, whatever the acronym is now? Because we've mentioned a couple times in this that kids, when you're young, it's very confusing. And in today's society, it's even more confusing. So I wonder if not having the stability makes you more likely to get lost in the world, so to speak, or is it just a figment of my imagination?
I'm trying to look very quickly at. I think the study might be from '06, so it's a long time ago. But it says childhood family correlates to homosexual tendencies, but it's not loading, so I don't know what it is. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a valid point. It's interesting how you might that they may be, and if that's the case, then what causes people to grow up in singlehood, single parent households? I think it's a lot of people who are irresponsible and have a child when they're not ready.
Yep.
Again, they're not married, and so then you're at a financial deficit, and you split up because things are a lot tougher. So it would be a lot easier if everybody would just wait to get married until they had children, and I think a lot of I think a lot of issues would be solved. But
Well, it
that's not going
doesn't
to happen
help.
as long as we're promoting all this
I was going to say
transgenderism.
it doesn't help that in the 1960s when Lyndon Johnson was president and he started the war on poverty and he incentivized single mothers. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not some crazy thing. It's you can look it up. If you were a
Mhm.
single parent, you got extra money from the government. So you're literally incentivizing people to have a child and then break off with your, significant other, spouse, whatever the situation was. And that was, the start of, like I said, like the decline in American morality in the 60s started
Yeah.
getting worse and worse. And now we're talking about trans masculine demi boys who can't give definitions to basic words that 4-year-olds can learn. That's not good.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, I've heard a lot of people make the argument, okay, well, if somebody can just become a woman by saying that they believe they're a woman, then does that mean that they can, let's say they commit a crime and they go to jail and you're a man, but you identify as a woman? Okay, does that mean that it's against my right to go to a male prison? Does that mean I should go to a female prison where I can assault
Well,
fellow
that's
inmates?
already happened. In Austin, there was 2 women who got pregnant in prison. I will look up the exact study or the exact article, but yes, there was a conservative podcaster or journalist who he got pulled over or something like that, and they thought he was a part of a crime or something like that.
Mm,
And they asked him, "Do you identify as a man or woman?" He's like,
uh-huh.
"What does that have to do with anything?" He's like, "Well, if you're need to be held, you'll be held with the women if you identify as a woman." And he's like, "You're kidding me, right?" She's like, "No." And he's like, "Well, then I'm a woman." She's like, "No, I need you to be serious." He's like, "Well, what if I am serious?" So it's
Yeah.
just that crazy where we're literally shifting away from reality. Like the basic reality of man and woman, male and female, we're trying to get away from it. And
Well,
that
on
should
the
be concerning.
whole Dr. Phil thing today, the first thing that this doctor, whoever she was, said that Matt Walsh's views were extreme, or I forget what the word she said. Maybe she said
Terrorist, probably.
well, maybe extreme was the word. Well, whatever. Maybe she used the word tyrannical,
Ah,
um, and too revolutionary. And he was like, so what people have been thinking for the last 2,000 years is all of a sudden tyrannical, and it's how does that even make sense? Because we've forgotten what the world thought for the last couple thousand years in
yep.
just these last 5 years. Everything has been changed, and if you think the way that everyone thought for so long, you're crazy. You don't care about other people. You don't care about what they think. People can do whatever they want, but don't tell me that I have to
Live
say
in your
this and
fantasy
do this.
land.
Yeah,
Here's my
exactly.
question for you, because I've had this argument with a few people. If a transgender person who you can clearly tell is a male, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
he comes up to you and he says, hi, my name is Catherine,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a woman. Are you going
Mm-hmm.
to call that person Catherine if that's their legal name? Because I refuse to call them what their I will say he, or I will not, or his or him. I won't, because that is a male. Like in the English language, when you're speaking about a male, you use the pronouns for a male. If his legal name is Catherine, then I'll use his legal name. But I've had a run-in with a few people who are actually pretty conservative and pretty religious, saying, "Oh, it's not worth that fight." But I'm like, this is reality. If we're feeding into this, then we're losing reality.
Yeah, I guess it would depend on the context and what was happening. I probably wouldn't, but depending on my mood, maybe if I just didn't want to be like rude or I didn't want to deal with it, um, then I probably would call them whatever they wanted. But if it got to be the point where I think it's more of it brings up the question, okay, if I said it, if I called him a he when she wants to be called she, or he wants to be called she,
Have fun with this.
I think if it got like, let's just say I said, oh yeah, he and I are going to go, and then all of a sudden he got extremely defensive and then started to become very disrespectful with me, then I think it would be different. But I mean, if I was just talking about something, I mean, sure, I'd call them whatever they want. I just don't think it's worth it. But I guess it would just depend on the scenario.
Yeah, because, and the point I've always tried to make about this, and we are doing a podcast called Accepting Reality, is that if we want to really make a positive difference, sometimes you have to ruffle people's feathers who are wrong. Like this is morally wrong. This is biologically wrong. To go through with any of the transgender stuff, it's just not right. And I think if we keep abiding in it, it will only get worse, so to speak, because then they're getting validated. Like, oh, look, they called me my pronoun. And it's
Yeah, and I think this doctor on the show today, she said something like biological gender is different than gender identity. So if you have a man who's born a man but they identify as a woman, those are two different things. Which I don't know how that makes sense, but in any case, that's how she was justifying this whole difference of genders, because she was saying that, wait a minute, even if you're born a certain gender, how you identify, that's a different story. So that's what we must go by, not by what they were born as, just what they identify as.
but there's so many logical fallacies to that because then I could identify as anything. If there's no limit to reality and biology, then I could be anything. And then we have no foundation to ground ourselves in, nothing to tie ourselves back to. Really, we won't
Mm-hmm.
have anything in common then. If I can be anything and you can be anything, we don't have anything in common.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this, I think, stems from people get too much freedom, and they can just do whatever they want, and the more people that go along with it, the easier it'll be for them to push the envelope even more and more and more. And who knows what they'll do? I don't even know. But I've
Well,
never come across. Have you ever come across a transgender person before?
yes, in college,
Okay.
my junior and senior year to college. Yeah.
See,
Um,
I don't think I ever have.
yeah.
I, I was trying to remember, but I don't think I've ever come across somebody like that.
Well, the problem is that he made it very clear to everybody that he was transgender with his hair that was
Was it
like
he or she?
he
A she
who
that
was
thinks it's
acting
a
like
he?
a she. A
He was
guy,
acting like a
he
she.
was a man
Okay.
who thought he was a woman.
Okay.
Yeah. So I I don't know what to say about this. It's really crazy. And I think we really need to put a stop to it, especially with children. This should absolutely not be allowed for anyone under 18. Like if you
Hmm.
cannot legally consent in the United States of America, you should not be allowed to do any of this. Full stop. Just stop it there.
Yeah.
18,
Yeah.
because you 18, your parent, your parents don't have to be, you don't need a legal guardian anymore, all this other stuff. If you're 18, you want to do this, so be it. This is you'll accept the consequences of your choices. But anyone under 18 and any parents who try to get their kids to do it should be stopped and punished for it. I'm not saying go to jail, I'm not saying burn at the stake, but I think this needs to be put to a stop because it's destroying children. And it's
Yes,
leading to
but
incidents like the child abuse in Loudoun County.
yes, but if you have a child who you make wait till he's 18, you're punishing the child because they know who they are inside. And
Right.
so you need to release that into
Yes.
the world.
Because a 12-year-old who just, figured out how to use a calculator knows that he's a girl on the inside and that his body is betraying his mind and all these other stupid things that these people say.
Mm-hmm. It's
Like,
true.
I'm recently married and I'm terrified when I have to raise children in this society because my kids are going to see, look, so now Seth is now Susan. I'm like, what? And then I'm going to have to like, well, we can't go by them anymore because
Yeah. I mean, what are the statistics on the amount of people that are transgender? I mean, hopefully it's not high enough to where it'll be like, I mean, like I said, I've never come across anybody who's transgender. So maybe it's a low enough number where, a lot of people won't be impacted by it. You know what I mean?
of June 2016, so I'm sure this number has gone up. It was 1.4 million adults who identify as transgender.
Adults. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm assuming they're taking adult as over 18. This was done by UCLA law school. So I'm assuming they're going to use the legal definition of an adult.
Mm-hmm. That
So
number's
yeah,
got to be at least three,
double.
4 times that,
Yeah,
I
like you
would
said,
say.
everyone started coming out either to get attention because also when you have half of the politicians, and politicians are basically celebrities with how much airtime they get, saying that we're going to fight for these people's rights and we're not going to rest and all this other stuff, like Martin Luther King Jr. all over again, which is completely ridiculous because these people don't have any less rights than me or you.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Right.
you're more, like you said, you're more inclined to come out or you want to be in that group because they're the cool kids, like that's why fads, so to speak.
Let me ask you this. I've had this conversation with people before, and I've asked them this question. Do you think that if you took somebody who identifies as gay
Hmm.
and you kind of like went back in time to when they were little and didn't understand things, if you went throughout their life and shielded them from knowing what gay is, do you think they would still be gay by the time they got to be however old they are at this present time?
See, I think it would depend. I think they'd be less likely, but I think that the sin of it is still sometimes in people,
Mm-hmm.
like sometimes people are naturally more inclined to certain vices, and that is one of
Mm-hmm.
them. So I think it would depend, but definitely if you shielded them until they were mature enough to handle it, I think that would help. Um,
Yeah, because I always thought that people who are gay seem to draw inspiration from other people who are gay, like
yep.
singers or actors or whatever. So I just always wondered if you took them away from that experience in that world, if they would choose the same path as much as they did when they were growing up and they saw that.
Yeah, it's really I'm not really sure because like I said, I think some people have a natural inclination to it, like because it's a vice or a sin, Some
Mhm.
people are more quick to anger or some people are more quick to um impatience or foul language or something like that. Like sometimes it's just we all struggle with certain qualities that are good and qualities that are bad. So
Yeah,
I think it's a
that's true.
toss up. I definitely think that your environment plays a role in it though, and I think that's indisputable because your environment even outside of sexual orientation, your environment plays a role in things. Like I could say without a doubt, I'm a pretty avid bowler. If my family wasn't into bowling, I wouldn't be bowling twice a week and wouldn't have gone to college for it. That's just a basic example I have off the top of my head, that your
Right.
environment shapes you whether you like it or not.
Yeah. I've heard that you are how did it go? Your personality is the average of the five people you spend the most time with. So the
That's
five
really
closest,
interesting.
I, I don't know who said that, but the, the five people you spend the most time with, you take a little bit of each, and that makes the average part of your personality. So whether it be family or, because I think it's true, like, growing up, I would always see maybe friends that I would spend a lot of time with, and I would start to do things that they would do, just mannerisms or
Little
how I talked or
phrases.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but now I don't know when that stops, but I think the more people you're around, I should say, the longer you're around certain people, the more you start to become kind of who they are in a way, not completely, but
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, that kind of ties into the shaping who you are. And it changes throughout your life. You adapt differently when you're 18 than you did when you were 4 or
Oh yeah,
10 or
absolutely.
13 or whatever. And you pick up on different things, and you have different interests, so you follow different people. And I think that's what kind of groups this whole transgender and LGBTQ and everything together, is that once they see somebody that they idolize, they sort of go along with it, and that kind of shapes who they are.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I think this is a good place to wrap it up. This was a really good conversation. We spread out about a bunch of different topics, all related to the idea that you can't just disconnect from reality. You can't just disconnect from biology because you feel a certain way. Um, I would have to say that'd be the biggest message to take away from this.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you everybody for listening. Please go follow us on all of our social media on Facebook and Twitter. We are under the name DJ Media. Links will be on our YouTube channel. We are on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as Accepting Reality. And I believe we're also on Amazon Podcasts if you listen there as Accepting Reality. So again, thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and have a good night.